Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and welcome to A Dragon's Voice. I am your host, Ruan, and today we have a very special guest with us, someone who has been in the craft community for forever. and so, this individual had made a post on Facebook concerning, the elder guard, the old guard of the witchcraft community, slowly transitioning over into the Summerlands. And he made a really good point about like my generation and the future generations not having everything that they had due to oath-bound traditions and lack of hands-on training. And so instead of picking a quote from a relevant author, I thought it would be a really good idea to bring this elder on and kind of get a look behind the scenes of what brought Wicca, witchcraft, and paganism to grow here in the United States and across the world. And I am very grateful to have him on here. We have me and this individual had talked for a good hour or so after last week, and I learned a lot from him. And I think that he has a lot of wisdom that he could give to the rest of us, in the new generation, the new guard. And so, without further ado, I would like to welcome our guest. Um, Now, I'll probably mispronounce this as I'm still learning Kimreich, but it's what, Morthwin?
Mathawin.
Mathawin?
Yep, EDTH. N is an E sound, Mathawin. N, yeah, N sound.
Yeah.
Mathawin.
Well,
I'm not very good at it.
well, welcome to the show.
Sam Glenn tried to teach me well, so it's a tongue twister.
Oh, I bet.
It's all Greek to me.
Right, right. Well, thank you for being here today. I know that you you are definitely very much old guard, landline, no cell phone, and I know it might be a little difficult with the way Wi-Fi and stuff works. And so, thank you very much for taking time out of your Sunday to join us here on A Dragon's Voice.
Great to be here.
So,
My age.
so why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, your background in the craft, and
Oh boy, we started in English trad to begin with back in the mid '70s. Did a lot of correspondence with a lot of people from England and the mother covens over there. And basically, our mother coven was here in St. Louis with the Watersmeet cadres. Nowadays they call them Sabbath's Meat. So change their name just a hair, but they're basically all descendants from Carrie and Derek Aldridge's coven down there in St. Louis. Spread mostly around the Midwest, mostly in the Kansas City, St. Louis areas. Contact with Rutland. We corresponded with him quite a bit, and didn't make too many trips down to Georgia for some of the gatherings of the tribes, but my son managed to because he likes to travel a lot. So Frederi got down there, my son David, and they kicked around for years and years and years, and we swapped a lot of ideas, agreed on a lot of things, which we were both ex-Marine force, so should say Marine vets. There's no such thing as an ex-Marine.
mm-hmm.
And, so I got along pretty good with William, and eventually we got together in Des Moines. He came up from Des Moines, or he came up to Des Moines, came down in Georgia, and got Ruby Widner with him, and we did the initiations there just before Hallows. This was back in '77, so we've been kicking around quite a bit all over the country. But sometimes we even lost contact with him when we swapped addresses and nobody could get a hold of us for a while. Nobody knew where we were. And we did quite a bit of moving back and forth between here in Iowa and South Dakota. Uh, Eventually, we came back to the old Iowa area here and settled out here on the farm here in western Iowa. Uh, Changed the name and everything. Every time we moved, we had to change the name for a different coven. We've been public ever since the mid '70s, so we've been out of the brood closet for almost eternity now. It's sometimes it's a good thing, and sometimes it's a little iffy because you're not really sure how your neighbors stand on a lot of stuff. But usually, when we work with local clergy or a local church group, we get to know people a little better, and they ease up and find out that there's well a whole lot to worry about because there's witches living on the other side of town.
Right.
But we're not that scary, I don't think. We've had a lot of fun over the years. Basically, uh, English trad, Welsh, a little bit of Scottish thrown in there on the side, especially in the Western Islands. Uh, then we also managed to be Gardnerian there for a while we uh, knew the Omaha Council Bluffs area and did our Gardnerian through Joyce and Quentin Rasmussen's High Court Coven there in Council Bluffs. Uh, Joyce was a little ticked off because Raymond Buckland printed her name and address in this big blue book.
Oh, yes, yes. I remember that.
And later on, my son actually bought that house when it came on the market, and we lived in it ourselves for a while because he rented it to us. Nice to have a son that's that kind and thoughtful.
Right.
Meanwhile, he was moving somewhere else, and then he moved somewhere else. And then he said, "We're going to South Dakota." And I thought, "Oh, no, not again." Now he's settled down there in western Arizona, not too far from Radiator Springs. If you've ever seen the movie Cars,
Yes.
on on Route 66, still
Right.
there. But I think they've changed the numbers on that though. But the Route 66 signs are still up.
Awesome.
And
Awesome.
then he was sticking pretty much with the Indian stuff because basically that's the way most of our family worked. And we were brought up living with Native Americans and working with Native Americans. So his wife works for the schools there on the nearby reservation. And he's, of course, disabled because of the military injuries and stuff. But he putters around the house all day. I guess you could say he's a house husband. And, got, got the grandson Tiernan and the granddaughter. It's a lot of fun. The wife drives down every once. She drives down there all the time. Like money's no object. When are you guys ever going to drive up here to Iowa again? I think they passed through a time or two while they were moving everything down to Arizona because we had to make about 15 trips to get everything down there from South Dakota.
Right.
And, he was not far from the reservations up there, so we worked a lot with the water is like people and smuggled stuff in from South Dakota across the border into North Dakota reservations. So, and how'd you guys like a whole cow? It's all butchered up and in the freezer. We give them a lot of food and help smuggle in equipment, propane, and all the other supplies they needed. And kind of coordinated or helped coordinate things from the veterans over there for the protests.
Good.
No dabble.
Right.
They don't like that pipeline. But, it's a lot of fun. We still work a little with Indians. Most of the old timers that we used to know all ended up dying of diabetes from eating too much fried bread, I guess.
Right.
Uh, Good stuff, but you don't want to eat a whole lot of that.
Right. Right.
Maybe people have a lot of problems with diabetes. That's
Yeah.
probably one of the ones that hit them the worst is the diabetes thing. I don't know. It's kind of a genetic type thing, I think.
Right.
Uh, doesn't seem to make any difference which tribe you're from. Diabetes seems to be the number one to get you. Uh, And next thing you know, somebody tells us, hey, so and so is moving west. We'll do some last rites here and keep things keep things well balanced. We do a lot of Native American stuff, but nobody wants to go to a sweat lodge out here. So
Right.
we started a sweat lodge, and everybody said, no, I don't want to do that. It's too hot. But we do the Lakota style and the Shoshone style. They're both very close to each other, very similar. And boy, does it get hot. I'm weak as a kitten when I come out of there. You don't feel a thing until you jump into the cold water, and then you got to bathe.
Right.
Sweat lodge is a good way of connecting with spirits and your relations. It's usually referred to as grandmother's breath because
Yeah.
you're connecting with your ancestry. It doesn't really make any difference whether you're native ancestry or Caucasian ancestry or any any of the different cultures or subcultures. You're connecting with your own ancestors. Uh, that's the way that works. It's a recharge type thing. Get your batteries recharged so you can get out there and do the job.
Right.
Usually, when anybody's going into the military, they'll do that before they leave, just to make sure they're all squared away before they get to boot camp. Like
Right.
they've changed a lot over the years. There's a lot of some tribes are still the old-fashioned way, but there's a lot of tribes now that are allowing the women veterans to actually uh, jump into a sweat lodge as long as they're not during their moon.
Right.
If
Right.
they are, they keep them away. You know, that actually works. We've had a rather bad experience with that. We used to do a dance called the shield dance. And
Hmm.
basically, it's kind of like a challenge combat type thing, a reenactment of what would happen in combat. And, the person I was doing it with, one of our other dancers, was telling his mother, "Don't touch that shield. Women are not supposed to touch men's weapons." And, she reached out and put her finger up on the shield. And during the dance, drummers and singers were going along fine and everything else. Basically, it's all fake. We're not really hurting each other,
Hmm.
or not really doing any damage. But when uh, that was my shield she touched,
Oh.
and also touched his shield right next to her. And the bad part was the shield straps that held the back of the rawhide and
Right.
stuff on the shield snapped, both of them at the same time.
Huh.
The phony spear, it just had a phony wooden point on it, but it was rather pointy. Got me just below the belt,
Oh
and
Lord.
I was using a steel pipe tomahawk when his shield strap broke. The tomahawk, it was actually sharp. It does a
Oh
little damage.
no.
It does a little damage to the shield, and we're supposed to cut off a couple of feathers in the process with it. But it actually caught his arm just above the elbow,
Hmm.
and he needed about 7 or 8 stitches there to close that up.
Oh wow. Wow.
And his
Just
mother
goes
Ruth,
to show that certain taboos should still be followed.
his, his mother Ruth was in the moon at that time,
Yep.
and that did contaminate a couple of shields. Even
Wow.
though it's not an actual combat situation,
Right.
there's still a potential for injury there if something goes wrong. I'm just glad I wasn't with the Appaloosa boys that normally do that on horseback.
Oh
So
Lord.
we were just dancing. We weren't on horses. But I've seen shield snap. I've seen the spears actually bust in half.
Wow.
And it's a lulu. There's things that can go wrong in that dance. I think the audience gets a little excited out of it. That's why we do it. So if you want us to see attack white men and rape, pillage, and burn, that'll cost you extra.
Oh.
I got that from the Grey Owl movie. And, That was a pretty good movie. Turns out he wasn't a real Indian. He was just pretending to be an Indian for 90% of his life. He was actually born in England and migrated to Canada and
Yeah.
then was adopted by the tribe. But, he did a pretty good job of passing himself off as an Indian because he had many of the same features. But,
Right.
even married one of the local girls up there, and she didn't know any better. But I think it was almost 60 years he passed himself off as an Indian, and a newspaper reporter uncovered his story.
Wow. Wow.
And he promised to keep it secret after they had a little conversation.
Right.
It was a little crazy, crazy movie. Movies change a lot of things. Uh,
True. True. So, what can you tell me? I mean, one thing that a lot of us newbie witches, young witches, we've only heard about how things were early on in the witchcraft movement, specifically here in the United States, before the American Council of Witches came together to do their little principles thing. What can you tell us, behind the scenes about a lot of the background of something that we're really starting to see again occurring, the idea of witch wars. Now, I've always been very interested in that concept, especially since we're starting to see a lot of these things pop up again. So, what can you share with us, little tidbits of information about the good old witch wars?
well, did you say wars?
The witch wars, yes.
Um, I don't think there's a real lot of that going on. I know we work with just about everybody you can think of on the local level, and a lot of people on the national level. Uh, Back in them days, we had a lot going on up in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area. There was the Welland Group, and Carl Westcheck, and a lot of the people up there in that area formed what they called the Aquarian Anti-Defamation League,
Yes.
AADL.
Hmm.
And, of course, they went broke in a couple of cases that they were doing for Gavin and Yvonne Cross Church of Wicca. We always called that the Dayton Caper. They had Dayton, Ohio. There have been a lot of really freaky type bad things that have happened around the country. And usually, if somebody needed help, it didn't make any difference whether we got along well with each other or not. There's a tradition that if somebody asks for help, we have to stop and drop everything and help.
So, it wasn't really as bad as people put it out to be.
Yeah, not really that bad. I know a lot of times there's a half a dozen different cases of divorces, and when there's a divorce that goes bad or goes sour, usually it's pretty friendly. Uh, Usually the only thing they argue about is who gets custody of the books.
Right. Oh, I understand. I've been divorced twice, and so I've had to sit there and reclaim new books constantly.
That, that's my book.
Right? Pay me alimony, and I'll give you a few back.
I don't know whether you can see the video or not. I haven't got any video up right now. I'm strictly audio. But there's a whole mess of books that go from floor to ceiling behind me. There's a whole mess of books from the floor to ceiling over here, and a whole mess of books from floor to ceiling over there, and a few file cabinets around, like eight. And we keep track of everything and do one hell of a lot of reading. And, books are the thing. But, occasionally we end up duplicates because we'll buy somebody's collection off of them, and you say, okay, we got duplicates of this one, that one, this one, that one. Anybody want them? And get rid of a few books, so we got room for more books.
Right? Speaking of books, I mean, you've been around, be, before Scott Cunningham, Guide for the Solitary, before Llewellyn really kicked in, and we started getting all these books out there. How was it back in those days to be a witch and not have much in the way of resources?
Uh, well, I don't know whether you ever heard of the Whole Earth catalog or not. This was back in the '60s. They came out with what they called the Whole Earth catalog. There was a picture of the moonshot of planet Earth on the cover. This listed just about anything you could ever want. There was several groups. I can't remember the name of them that were into selling occult supplies. Herman Slater, of course, up in New York City, was one of
Right.
them. Several other major suppliers, and you could get a lot of books from them. And, there were several publishing companies. Llewellyn was not the only one. There were several over in Citadel Press, Camelot Press,
Hmm.
a few other in European countries, and then of course we communicated with a lot of people in Europe too, because our roots were in Great Britain. I've even written articles for our magazines when we tried publishing a magazine, and a lot of them got translated and published in French over in Dragon Rouge, the
Mm.
French craft publication.
Yes,
Means
yes.
Red Dragon.
Red
So
Dragon.
they, yep, they were kind of Welshish type traditions. Wrote a couple of articles on some Native American stuff, especially the white buffalo cow woman and the sacred calf fight. And, they're big on Native Americans over in France, and they translated that into French for that issue of their newspaper over there. But we picked up things from all over the place. Some of the books in this library were published over 100 years ago. We're kind of treasure those books a little bit. We've got several that Llewellyn republished here recently, uh, and changed a few
Right.
things.
Right.
Changed a few things. Nothing serious, just enough to make it their own. So that they don't
Right.
publish it kind of like Walt Disney does with stories like Pocahontas and
Grimm's tales that they
well,
bastardize.
yeah, uh, we can copyright it now, but
Right.
those copyrights are generally only good for 11 years, but, unless you renew them.
Right.
But, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, when I was younger, the magazine that we had that really stayed around for quite some time, and I know it's still around, but we don't really hear much about it anymore. And that was Azure Green, and their warehouse prices and stuff were amazing. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, I noticed that because I came to the craft when I was about 7 years old, introduced to it by my grandfather. But this was about, I didn't realize it, that there were other people out there that, you know, did the things I did and stuff until I actually got about 9, 10 years
Well,
old and discovered, of course, Uncle Bucky's Big Blue Book, Guide for the Solitary Practitioner, Ways of the Strega, and of course, Ruthwin's books. Um, and then after that, it's just like everything exploded, and it's been definitely a very very big change in the last 30 years. That at least that I've been in the craft.
Green Egg is still around.
Oh yes.
Back in the early '70s, they started out on a mimeograph and later went offset press. And they're still kicking now, but everything's electronic nowadays, I think. It's available on the internet.
Right. Weird, huh?
We had a column in the main catch of Green Egg back in the old days was the forum. There's
Yes.
about 90% of Green Egg was people writing in letters and explaining things and talking about this and talking about that. And the main purpose of the green egg was just basically making contact with everybody that was in the craft or the New Age movement, and especially the Church of All Worlds. And
Yes.
so the forum really got things rolling. And I think if you want to talk about witch wars, the only witch wars that were going on were in the forum. Somebody'd write one thing, and somebody'd say, "Oh no, wait a minute, I'm calling BS on that."
Right. Right.
But it was a pretty good deal. Uh, Don Waldrop down in St. Louis is one of the older school, and just about every time me and Don get together, he gives me another complete set of all the back issues that he had up to about 1970.
Wow.
Yeah, about 1970. So we got a lot of the originals here. I don't have any of the mimeographs copies because those were all gobbled up in no time by the people in the local area down there in Mount
Right.
St. Louis. But, when they started doing the offset, they were printing more than they actually needed so they could still sell back issues.
Right. Right.
And I think Don has a whole basement full of back issues. There were people basically from all over the world communicating with the Green Egg Forum, even artists. So they had a lot of artwork that was rather interesting too, which is the main reason why they switched to offset. We started ours on offset, kind of gave up because a lot of people didn't want us publishing what we were publishing.
Right. Right.
So you guys are talking about all kinds of things, and none of them are deep dark secrets.
Right.
But
But they're oath bound.
some people can make use of this stuff in the wrong way and get
Right.
themselves into trouble. And that's one thing we always worried about. We wanted to keep people from getting into hot water and taking the advice of some elders and making sure they don't do that. Is the main thing. And, a lot has changed in the last good lord, since the flower children were around.
Right.
Most of us hippies are still hippies, but not in the same way that we were 50 years ago. Uh, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s were just warming up, and in the last 20 years, things are really opening up thanks to all the computer and the internet and everything else. World Wide Web. Now it's the
Right.
cloud. So
Tell me about it.
I can remember a lot of people telling stories that were working with computers back in the 70s and 80s that we actually pulled a ritual that we were doing coast to coast here in the United States. And the watchers in the East Coast and the watchers in the West Coast, the watchers in the South, the watchers
Wow.
in Canada's Arctic regions, because it was basically North America, they fried the internet.
Oh.
So we have to be careful.
Actually, it's funny that you mentioned that because every single online or phone ritual I've ever been a part of, everything has always gone wonky like that. You know, internet would fry. I had a hard drive crash. I mean, it's. I'm amazed at just how much technology is caught up. So there's only like a little bit of malfunction, but wow.
Oh, we tried it back in them days too. We tried to record a ritual once with a little cassette tape recorder. Red light was on, everything tested out, everything was working perfectly. But during the ritual itself, all you can hear is the motor running. That's it.
Wow.
No audio whatsoever. So we decided, okay, electronic stuff just ain't going to work right.
I guess some things are definitely oath bound, and they'll make sure you keep it.
There's a lot of people that are into crystals, and you got to realize that just about every component in those electronic devices has crystals
Exactly.
and some kind of a crystal.
Yep.
A lot of it's made from quartz, but there's some kind of a crystal involved in just about all of it. And that's where the charges come in. And you can charge things with that electrostatic stuff that most humans can't even feel it unless they're skyclad, and they can kind of feel the tingle across their
Right,
shoulders.
right.
But the electronic stuff picks it all up.
Oh my lord.
Uh, Kind of a human magnetism type thing.
It just goes to show that, that there's a lot of stuff that's in the craft that, is legit, and science is slowly catching up. And, it's stories like this that allow future generations to really sit there and be able to look back and say, we've known this since then, and
Oh
to
yeah,
really integrate it into our lives, to make us really think about what technology are we bringing into our circles, what technology are we bringing into our houses, and how will our craft interfere with such things.
well, we do a lot of work with the fairies, and we're lucky we got a blackthorn grove just about 50 yards west of the house here, and they don't come in the house.
Really?
We've got all this electrical stuff. They do occasionally, but they're shy of all the electrical stuff. They're shy of anything that contains a static charge.
Right.
That's most of the furniture. Static, just even a static charge, it's just a spark to us, but to them it's very painful.
I never would have even thought of that.
Well, what is it? Nylon, rayon, dacron, polyester.
True, true.
Drag your feet across the carpet just once, That's a dirty trick to play on the cats,
Right.
especially when they're looking for a little affection. Uh, then they get this big dancing
Zap.
blue spark from your fingers. Yeah, we've got about five of the little fur burgers. And, they're indoor outdoor cats. Let me in, let me out, let me in, let me out.
Right.
We don't have a pet door because we also have about 500,000 raccoons down by the
Oh,
creek, along with the skunks and the badgers.
no, I get you.
And occasionally I scare up a groundhog or a possum.
No, I get you. I live by a creek, you know, pretty much in the middle of bumfuck Egypt and stuff. And so we've got hawks, we've got eagles, we've got cougars and bears, and so our cat's an inside cat. Cat I used The cat that used to claim me is an outside cat, and there's no way we can get her inside, so we just let her run around rampant. Um, but she usually lets us know if there's any, big game animals around, stuff like that, because she'll come over and she'll kind of scratch at our door and say, basically, stay inside. Then she'll get up on top of a few of the trailers around here, just keep their eye open. And no, I get you. I get you.
Yeah, we had the same problem when we lived at Wooded Lake. Uh, that was a nice trailer park, but that was long, long time ago. I can't believe it. I lived by that lake for 7 years and never once got to go fishing.
Really?
That's the problem when you're working.
Oh, yep, yep.
But, I worked for Campbell Soup for 20 years. When they finally shut down the plant, I said, "Oh, I might as well retire because I didn't think I'm old enough to get a job anywhere else."
Right,
Yeah, they don't want to hire old people. But, hey, you're going to retire in a couple of years. Well, I'm going to retire right now.
right.
Never have to wear rubber boots again. But we always wore rubber boots because we were always hosing everything down and cleaning everything.
Right.
If you wore street shoes, you'd have wet socks in no time. The bad part is all that chlorine bleach they use to sanitize everything.
Yep.
It doesn't mix well with pneumonia. All our refrigerants and everything at the Campbell's plants use ammonia. It's not a
Oh,
refrigerant.
Lord.
And if there's a leak, there's always somebody that knows about it almost instantly because of the reaction,
Right.
chemical reaction. Chlorine and ammonia. It activates chlorine gas.
Oh, Lord.
And, any acids or ammonia will activate that chlorine gas. And since everything is sanitized with fluorinated water, with
Right.
chlorine gas release. I've been exposed to chemicals all my life, and I wonder why I got COPD.
Right.
It all started working for Firestone Tire and Rubber Company up there in Des Moines. They use a lot of chemicals to go in and build tires, not just rubber.
Right.
It's a lot of fun. I think I'll make 80. I don't know about anything after that though. Only got 2 years to go. We do worry kind of a lot about the younger generation picking up on the heritage and the legacy that the craft is, because a lot of things in our tradition, you probably, as a newbie coming into the craft, you say, I wonder if this really works. And then after first two or three experiences, when you see that it does work and it works remarkably well, you say, dang, I'm going to have to study this tarot stuff, or I'm going to have to study this herbal medicine, or I'm going to have to study how these crystals work, or rocks, just any kind of rock. It doesn't have to be a crystal. You'd be surprised what you do with just a plain old agate.
Right.
And they're the most common thing around. But then when you get into the magical stuff, I mean, you're really talking human energy and human dynamics. There's a lot of things that thought about maybe imaginary or kind of fantasy when you were a kid, but are actually not a fantasy. They're real.
It's amazing that you mentioned that because when I was younger, I was really into Magic the Gathering and stuff like that, the
Mhm.
card game. And, I actually, one of my best friends at the time, his stepfather worked for Wizards of the Coast. And so when I would get cards, he would bring it in there, get them all signed and stuff. And, well, my dad, being a fundamentalist, decided to go and burn all that stuff. But I did, before I even heard of chaos magic, I picked up the idea of, the colors with the aspects of the land. You like black being swamps, and I actually started. At this time, I was living in Edmonds, Washington, and so we kind of had a little bit of all of them around. But I would pick up like water from Pacific Ocean and stuff like that to symbolize those color mana. And I actually built up, a practice focused around that with help from like um, let's see, I think what book by Scott Cunningham was it? I think it was Earth Power, Earth Magic, and kind of focused it around that. Got it to work. Worked with, I've even worked with the Pantheon from Dragonlance. Um, and so it's amazing you say that, just how powerful a paradigm can be.
You'd be surprised. It's like people will say, how do you create a familiar spirit? And I said, well, you know how an author makes up the imagery or the characteristics of the characters they're writing about in their book?
Right.
When he's doing that in his mind, he is actually creating a kind of a, I don't know what you'd call it.
An egregiory, artificial
We can't
elemental.
use, yeah, we can't use the word shade, but he's
Right.
actually creating the essences of that individual that's strictly a fictional character. But even though it's fictional, those essences are kind of rolling around in a little ball and becoming one with each other. And the next thing you know, somebody is actually picking up on that. And it's like if they're writing about crime, criminal activity, and it's purely fiction. Next thing you know, it becomes reality because that author is putting everything he's got into that character, and that character is manifesting itself. It becomes real.
Such as like
Uh,
the Simon Necronomicon,
yeah,
which
there.
actually was one of the first books that I actually got something to actually happen with. Amazing enough.
Uh, I love the I love the artwork. We got copies of the Necronomicon for children.
I love it.
but it's foamy.
Right.
I'll have to send you a picture of that.
That would be amazing.
Volume one, volume two, volume three, volume four.
Right.
But there are a lot of books that one of them that we picked up on almost immediately as soon as they came out with it, because you're dealing with all these other publishing companies. Was The Marshall Cavendish Corporation came out with one called what the heck's the name of it? Man, Myth, and Legend. It was
Yes.
a 24 volume set of books. Of course, we're working on them now to get them all into 6 volumes at once.
Right.
It doesn't take up four
Whole,
feet on a bookshelf. It only
right.
takes up 2 feet.
I vaguely remember my aunt Katrina. She was a practicing witch, and I think that was my first real encyclopedia of of magic. It really was. It was like it was the thing because there really was not much out there.
Oh yeah. Oh, he's pretty good. Some of our older books, let's see, Robbins wrote the Encyclopedia of Witchcraft and Magic. That was just a single volume. He kept everything in alphabetical order, which is
Right.
amazing. But there's a lot of old artists, authors back in those days that basically did research. And if you keep it all organized, put it all together, bingo, you've got a book.
Maybe I should do
Scott,
that.
Scott, Scott Cunningham did that.
Yeah.
Scott did all his research, and then he kept everything in miraculous files. I mean, they were immaculate. Everything was so concise and perfect. He says, "Okay, I have one book here, one book here, one book here, one book here," and he just
Explains a
kept
lot.
adding. Yeah, he just kept adding to them. We've got Cunninghams in our family, but we're not related.
Yeah.
But unless you call us Scots, then we are related.
No, I get you. I think I was doing genealogy, and I think like a good 300 years back, I might have a connection to where Scott came from, but I don't know.
Well, we all have the same
Genealogy.
relative. Somebody's always telling me, "Hey, your ancestors used to do human sacrifice." I said, "That's nothing
Some
to
of
do with
them
your
still
ancestors."
do, if you don't be quiet. No, speaking of that, I just pulled up the Facebook post that you made that really focused on what I wanted to talk about here, and I will quote right here. You say, "There's a rumor going around that we are awfully proud of our ancestry and our bloodlines. It's true, and we honor them every chance we get. That's especially true of our legacy and heritage in the craft, even though some people want us to keep that all secret. Can't understand why common knowledge should be a secret when many other people have already shared it to the public and even published it in books. But there's a goodly amount of our family history that can only be shared with others who are in the craft. We have a pretty big craft family stretching around the globe that spans almost 60 years, plus 20 years to cover shipping and handling." Now, that was beautiful, and can you expand on that? What exactly was in your mind?
Oh, well, a lot of people don't pay much attention to their past lives, their regression. It's what we call trace memory. Some people call it race memory, but they're just dropping the T as far as
Right.
trace memory. The trace memory is a vestigial memory that's locked in your subconscious. And if you are pressed into action, you will react instinctively according to that trace memory and what's in your mind. And when we have a high priestess or a high priest that says, "I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that when I die, I'm going to be coming back to visit you," believe me, they are. And they do come back to visit. Hey, you'll be sitting there and all of a sudden you'll smell a perfume, or you'll get the smell of pipe smoke or cigarette tobacco or something that's a dead ringer for those people. And you'll sit there and absorb whatever they're transmitting to you. It's like carrying Derek Allred. Carrie died, she had a brain tumor and didn't want anybody to know, so they were saying she had to take pills for epilepsy.
Right.
But didn't really have epilepsy. She just had an inoperable brain tumor and didn't want any of us to actually heal that, even though we healed some of her other cancer by the cord magic and rituals. And if we tried to work on that, that would have probably screwed things up because this brain
Right.
tumor was actually part of her quality of life. And she says, I'm going to be able to do a lot more for you guys after I'm gone than I can while I'm alive, because she would have these seizures occasionally. And, true, when she died, she would come and give me all kinds of stuff, just like a flash and a heartbeat, like a split second. And the next thing you know, I'd be telling Derek about it. And Derek was telling me the same damn thing before. So she's telling Derek the same thing she's telling me. And so you know that in that afterlife, she's actually coming back to get things done in this life. She, after she left Kansas City and went over to Iraq, uh, Derek was there working on the nuclear reactor that the Iranian blew up the nuclear reactor, and they had to go over and do some repair work. They're working for the UN
Right.
Development Commission, and she died in Baghdad and was buried in the British cemetery in Baghdad, Iraq. So naturally, we channeled all our energy to her during the Desert Storm. And there was all of the Americans that died, you could type up on one sheet of typewriter paper. And the majority of those were when that one Scud missile hit the barracks and killed a lot of people all in one whack. So she did a real good job of making sure the Americans and all the other United troops were protected during that battle. That's why it only took about a week.
Right.
But, and very few injuries. And then she was reborn. And then Joyce died later. She was our Gardnerian high priestess, and she would pop in all the time for coffee and smoke, and we'd sit there and chit chat on the spirit plane. So it's all mental. It's we call it mental spiritualism. But
Right.
one thing I noticed about spiritualism is it scares the hell out of satanic practitioners. Uh, Most of them are LeVay's students.
Right.
Anton LeVay, I guess, told all his students to stay the hell away from things you can't see
What?
and don't have anything to do with those things you can't see. They're actually real. uh, Usually, when I come across a Satanist, and then I mention to that Satanist that I'm Wiccan or witch traditions, next thing you know, they pack up and left town, lock, stock, and barrel.
Wow.
I didn't know what it was all about. And then somebody that I know that has dabbled in Satanism said that LeVay's people have been told by LeVay and his Church of Satan to stay away from the spiritualists and anything that has to do with the dead. They don't have anything to do with the people that are involved in spiritualism. And they can be dangerous to the satanic principles or whatever. But, we had a shop. When we lived in Des Moines, we had a shop moved into Des Moines. What the heck was the name of that place? It was a satanic shop. The black something or the dark something. I can't remember the name of the shop. But I would drive past it every day on the way to work. One day I decided I'm going to go in there and take a look around. So I pulled my pentacle out, polished it up a little bit, wore it on the outside of my shirt instead of the inside of my shirt.
Right.
Stalked in and looked around. There were a few people there, and everybody clammed up the minute I walked through the door. There was a lot of good stuff, herbs and candles, and somebody was damn good at lost wax silver casting and was doing some beautiful silver casting jewelry. And everything was kind of overpriced as far as I was concerned. So I didn't buy anything. And after 5 minutes, I walked out. And the next day, as I'm driving by on the way home from work, there's a going out of business sale. Everything must go.
Oh my lord!
And they were not in Des Moines for very long.
Wow.
And went into another Satanist down in Missouri when I worked as a cashier or night cashier at the truck stop there. And he was a pump jockey, and I was a night cashier, handling all the cash transactions, handling, giving out green stamps. And when it came out, we got to talking about things that kind of bordered on the occult. Then he just kind of blurted out, "Hey, I studied under Anton LaVey's school up there in Omaha when they had the school in Omaha. This was down in Rockport, Missouri."
Yeah.
"Hey, no kidding." I said, "Hey, I'm Wiccan." And the conversation stopped. And the next day, he didn't show up for work. And I said, "Where's so and so?" And I said, "Hey, he packed up the wife, the kids, the dogs, and everything." And boom, nobody knows where he's
Wow.
at. He's
Wow.
gone. It's alluded, so something there is got to do with the spiritualism that we use, and we do communicate with the spirits if we can get things done. There's several ways of doing that. I don't recommend the actual physical letting them into you part.
Hmm.
If you let them in, you got to make sure they're righteous and they're not in any way going to screw you up, because
Right.
a lot of people are getting well, it's not really possession, but they do take over your body.
Well,
And
it
as
kind of
long as they,
reminds me of Alia from the Dune series,
yeah,
where she gets possessed. The
yeah,
personalities of the Baron Harkonnen take her over. And so, yeah, even I don't recommend that to most of my students, though I, of course, will teach them under the right circumstances, under the right setup, how to do it. I won't run them through it, but I'll give them, but I like prefer, like of course, the tarot, the Ouija board, if done properly, through such other means.
I think
But
one
no,
of
I get you.
I think one of the easiest to accomplish is just take a blank sheet of paper and a pen or a pencil,
Automatic writing.
start automatic writing.
Yep.
I know when you're like I usually come across them at work because when I worked there at Firestone, everything I did was monotonous as hell. It's a repetitive thing, day in and
Trance.
day out. Same whole thing. You're in kind of a trance. You're in
Hmm.
a state of alpha. You're actually going about all your work automatically while your mind is a million miles away.
Just like when you
That's
sit there and you drive home and you're like, how the hell did I get home?
yeah.
Yep.
You're in an alpha state doing that because it's something you do repeatedly over and over again.
Yep.
You'll stop at all the green lights and red lights and whatever and make all the right turns. But you're alert, but you're not fully alert. Your mind is
Exactly.
a million miles away. But when you're in that alpha state like that, you can pick up on things really easy. You could get into a deeper state, and that usually scares the hell out of people. Somebody will be halfway asleep, and then all of a sudden something will hit them, and they'll just lurch, and bingo, they're right awake again because it surprised them.
Right. Right.
If they went into that a little more gently, they could pick up on a lot of things when they go down into the beta consciousness. But the key to most of this is not in our superconscious mind, because that's a really fast wavelength. And if you stay in that superconscious mind long enough, you'll burn yourself out. The normal conscious is a gentle wavelength, but the subconscious mind is a really slow wavelength.
Right.
And 9/10 of the stuff we're looking for is not in the superconscious like the New Age people are saying. It's in the subconscious. You've got to
Right.
go down. You've got to go down to get into that trace memory. Once we go into that trace memory, then you can do all this regressive stuff. Some of it's very painful. You want to go back to a point in that previous lifetime where you were perfectly happy and perfectly comfortable. If you go straight back, you're going through a death.
Yeah.
You're going through the death. And that could hurt like hell. It depends on how you die. So you
Right.
go back to the time before that death moment. I went straight back the first time I tried that.
Same here.
And
Yep.
when I got hit by that shrapnel, I was muttering vicious obscenities. And
Right.
making innuendos about your parents' marital status and your sexual preferences and things
Right.
like that because it hurt so bad. I actually had tears coming down my cheek.
Yeah.
And that part is it happened while I was at work
Oh
because
no.
I just keep myself to do it automatically, and that was a mistake. You got
Yeah.
to do it with plenty of control. You don't want to do it automatically because it could happen anywhere, anytime. And they came up and said, "Bob, are you okay?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I got some lamp black in my eye,
Right.
and it kind of stings a little."
Right.
Yeah. And then, of course, I bled to death. So
Yeah.
that didn't help much. I said, "Okay, that's what happens in wartime." And,
Mhm.
when you go back, there's a lot of things that your guides and the people that are helping you from the spirit side aren't going to let you in on right away. You got to kind of earn the right to it. They tell me I'm not going to tell you anything about the future because if I do, you'll screw it up.
Right.
And I probably would. I probably would, but you got to be to the point where you're ready for it. Because sometimes this stuff, if you get it, you're in deep doo doo because you don't know why you got it and you don't know what to do with it. It's a little too much to handle unless you reach a point where you can handle it. They're going to protect you. They're not going to. They're not going to get two jumps ahead of you. They're going to keep pace with you. I know there was several times when I got the smell of a spirit that we called all the time because he was one of our guides that we usually call in from the spirit side to help out with
Right.
medical part. And everybody says, "Oh, I smell this wonderful perfume, and there's no flowers around. Where's it coming from?" And you all, of course, say, "Well, that's from Tavina.
Right.
She's here, and that's the way you know she's here." But I could never smell it,
Right.
and everybody else could. There'd be half a dozen other people, and they'll all smell it, but I couldn't. And there's nothing wrong with my smeller. And finally, Tavina says, "If you smelled this perfume, it would key and trigger some
Mm.
stuff, and
Right.
you're not looking for that yet." Of course, about 15 years later, I finally got to the point where I was ready for it, and I found out what the connection was.
Right.
And we were handfasted at that point in time, years back in Wales.
Right.
And of course, I hadn't regressed to that point yet. And that's one point that I don't want to regress into because I'm not ready to regress into that Welsh bit.
Right.
Uh,
Well, I
sometimes
hate
there
to
is.
cut you off, but we are at the end of our show. Thank you very much for joining us. And if there was one thing you could pass on to the next generation, what would that be?
Study, study, study.
All
The more
right.
you know about the more you know about things, the better you get at things.
Awesome.
I'm what they call a jackass of all trades. I know a little bit about this, a
A
little
little
bit
bit
about
about
that,
that.
a little bit
Yep.
about that, just because I'm trying to teach this stuff. If
Exactly.
if you don't know something, tell them you don't know.
Right.
Don't make something up.
Yep.
Just say, "Hey, I'm going to have to look that up
I'll
myself."
get back to you. I tell that to my
Yeah,
clients almost all the time.
oh,
But
oh
no,
yeah.
thank you very much for being here. And I will talk to you later and maybe we'll have you on the show again.
Okie dokie. Take care
Awesome.
then. Bright blessings.
Bright blessings. And that is our show, everybody. Thank you for being here on A Dragon's Voice. And of course, I got to go through my normal spiel. If you like this show and would like to help promote the show to kind of get the word out there about the many generations of the craft, of building community, and where we've come from and where we are going. If you would like to help A Dragon's Voice Ministries, you can go to my website at ruandhayden.com. I have all my services listed. I've got a blog that I eventually will get to. But if you really like to support my work and would like to give a monthly suggested donation, you can go over to patreon.com/RuanDHayden. I've got 5 different tier levels of support. The lowest one is $5. That's less than a cup of coffee from Starbucks. And with that, you get access to our Fairy Friday episodes where we do a little book group. We are currently going through and Caru by Robin Artisan, and that is only for patrons. At various tier levels, you get other different benefits, such as a complimentary monthly divinatory reading, or a distant healing, offering and petitions done to them unseen, and many, many more. Uh, if you want to give, or feel called to give a single donation, you can send that to my dead name email account at revadam letter J Hayden at gmail.com, or through Cash App at Ching Ruan D Hayden. And this was a Dragon's Voice. We do the show every Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific here on YouTube. Check me out for Tuesday's show. We are no longer doing the Tarot Tuesday. We are now doing Witch Talk Radio with Ruan D. Hayden. And that, of course, also will be 4 o'clock p.m. on Tuesdays here on YouTube Pacific Time. And with that being said, I would like to wish you all a good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And may you never hunger, may you never thirst, and may the good neighbors always, always, always be with you. So mote it be.